What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 3 league-winning wide receivers that I think you guys should be looking to target in your fantasy football drafts. Yesterday, I did pretty much the same video, but I talked about the running backs. So if you're interested, go check that one out after this video. And then also, if you guys are interested in just seeing my overall rankings, I have like a top 200 for regular one quarterback and super flex, and then all my positional rankings. You can find the link to that down below in the description. You just kind of make your own copy. If you want to take it into your drafts, you can like check off the players. It'll cross off their names. So if you guys are interested in that, it's just free. You can just download the link yourself in the description. And if you guys enjoy the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. But let's just jump right into it. We're going to start off with my first league-winning wide receiver, and it is going to be Calvin Ridley. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 16, so at the round 3-4 turn, so late round 3, early round 4. And I think the general goal when you're drafting a fantasy wide receiver 2 is that you want them to finish as a wide receiver 1. Even though you're getting them as a wide receiver 2, you want them to hit that upside of being a top 12 wide receiver. You obviously want them to pay off, but I think you're also shooting for some upside with these picks. And then if you're drafting like a fantasy wide receiver 3, you obviously still want that wide receiver 1 upside, but more realistic mid to high end wide receiver 2 production. But the overall goal is that you want these guys to kind of outperform their price. Right now, Calvin Ridley is being drafted as the wide receiver 16, and so you're drafting this dude as a mid-tier wide receiver 2, but his last full season in the NFL was the wide receiver 4 in points per game. So you're not even like really going in and having to make all these like projections of, okay, he has to take a jump here, this needs to get better for him to be a wide receiver 1. The last time we saw him over a full season, he was that guy. He was a high-end wide receiver 1 for fantasy, and I feel like getting that type of value as like a mid-wide receiver 2 pick is pretty much unprecedented for fantasy football, especially when you're considering the fact that he's only 28 years old. Like, it's not like he's coming out here falling off an age cliff or like in a terrible offensive situation, like he just lost his franchise quarterback, getting way up there in age. Like, none of this is happening for Calvin Ridley. He's paired with one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 on what should be a very impressive offense, and an offense that I think will take another step forward here in year 3 with Trevor Lawrence, and then year 2 with Doug Peterson. And then also, obviously, like, we can't take the training camp reviews as like gospel, but I mean, his reviews out of camp have been pretty much amazing. Like, it seems like every single beat reporter for the Jaguars has just been completely raving about Calvin Ridley. Obviously, there's some risk with Ridley only playing 5 games in the past 2 seasons. That's obviously why his, ADP is down compared to what he did in the 2020 season. But I still think the risk is totally worth it here. Like, he could experience a pretty decent fall off from that 2020 season where he was the wide receiver 4 and still live up to his current price as the wide receiver 16. Personally, I have him in my top 24 overall rankings, so I think if you're getting him at the 3-4 turn, that's a complete steal. I think he's someone who in more competitive leagues is probably going to be going like early 3rd round area. So if you're playing in, just a league with your buddies on a more casual format, he's someone that I do think is one of the best values you can find, pretty much at any position in your drafts. Now, the second league-winning wide receiver for me is going to be Mike Williams. He's being drafted as the wide receiver 26, which is like the round 5-6 turn. And we've seen Mike Williams over the last 2 seasons finish as the wide receiver 13 and the wide receiver 20 in points per game. So he has back-to-back top 20 seasons, and now he's being drafted outside the top 24 wide receivers. When we look back to last season, he was the wide receiver 20 in points per game, but in a down year for the Chargers, when he was healthy, like you take out the games where he played, I think like sub 40% of the snaps, he was the wide receiver 12 in points per game. So even with Herbert with the banged up ribs, all the injuries to the offense, when healthy, he was still a wide receiver 1 for fantasy. And now we're looking at him go as the wide receiver 26. So Mike Williams has been able to deliver you like fringe wide receiver 1 production, and he's also never even hit a big touchdown season. Like, it's not like one of the past 2 years he put up, 11, 12, 13 touchdowns. He has 13 total touchdowns in the past 2 seasons, and this is definitely a Chargers offense that can put up big touchdown numbers. In 2020, Herbert threw for 31 touchdowns in 15 games. 2021, he threw for 38 touchdowns. in 17 games. So a big touchdown season is definitely possible for Mike Williams. And if he does end up getting one of those, I think he could comfortably end up finishing as like a top 12 fantasy wide receiver. I think the potential concern for Mike Williams and why his ADP maybe is a little bit low, at least, in my opinion, is that the Chargers did go out. They added Quentin Johnston in the NFL draft. But personally, I really think this is an offense that can support 3 fantasy relevant wide receivers. And I'm still very in on Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. Like, I really like both of those guys at their current price. But I do think there are some routes to those guys kind of disappointing, even though I am in on them. Like, you look at Keenan Allen, he's getting up there in age. That's obviously his risk. He's coming off a season where he has missed 7 games. So maybe he starts to slip a little bit. Maybe he gets hit with like the injury bug again. Those things are all possible. For Quentin Johnston, he is like a semi-raw kind of prospect. So maybe he doesn't step in and become a huge factor in year 1. My overall point here is that I think even if Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston hit, I still think Mike Williams can live up to this ADP, but there are all these other situations where, maybe those guys don't live up to it. Mike Williams becomes the clear wide receiver 1, or he just hits big in the touchdown department where he can put together a top 12 wide receiver season and you're getting him outside the top 24. So that's my second league-winning wide receiver. And my third one is going to be Diontae Johnson. He's being drafted as the wide receiver 31 as like a round 6-7 turn pick. So after a rough 2022 season, it definitely seems like Diontae's ADP is kind of deflated heading into 2023. Full transparency, I was very in on Diontae Johnson last year, and I was completely wrong. He totally burned me. He was pretty much useless from where he ended up being drafted. But, coming back at this wide receiver 31 price, I'm 100% willing to buy back into him here in 2023. It's no secret that Diontae flopping last season was pretty heavily due to him just doing nothing in the touchdown department. The dude scored 0 touchdowns in 17 games. It's honestly a crazy stat when you consider the fact that he was targeted 147 times. Like, that is a crazy number of targets to not hit the end zone once. I also just think, though, even though he had that bad touchdown luck, I think it's very rare to find a player who's consistently commands 8+ targets a game in 3 straight seasons to be going outside the top 30 wide receivers. Like, volume is huge at the wide receiver position, and Diontae Johnson is a guy who's just guaranteed year-to-year volume. I think the Steelers' offense has looked really strong throughout the preseason. Obviously, they're not consistently going up against the starters, but it's nice to see. And I think at the very least, like, it's clear that Kenny Pickett has taken a step forward. Not saying he's going to go out there and be a top 10 NFL quarterback, but we really just need this passing attack to not be like bottom tier in the NFL. When we look at these snaps with just the starters this preseason, so, we got Pickett, Diontae Johnson, George Pickens, the starters out there. Diontae has a 29% target share and a 38% air yard share. So I don't really see any reason why Diontae doesn't repeat as a high-volume wide receiver. I think he's going to have another high-volume season. And if this Steelers passing attack is even just like league average, I really think he's going to smash at his ADP. He has been a wide receiver 2 in fantasy. He's been a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Those are all like reasonable outcomes for him. So I think he's definitely going to pay off at this wide receiver 31 price. And especially like in your PPR formats, Diontae Johnson is someone I'd be very focused on targeting. So those are going to be my 3 league-winning wide receivers. Got Calvin Ridley, Mike Williams, and Diontae Johnson. How are we feeling about these players? Do you guys like these as values? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you did enjoy the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.